that if the media is not responsible, then the freedoms will be taken away. And this is an utterly irresponsible statement.
We shouldn't try and further this whole terminology called responsible journalism, because the question is, who in whose eyes?
We connect Ghana and beyond for a frank conversation. We connect after the break.
I had Sabi Gusu Yusumi Mumuno. If you say MTN Echimacha at their two table, brand new Samsung 65-inch UHD Smart TV. Now brand new 2019 Hyundai. And I feel 3,000 Ghana. You should say mono. MTN Momo. Still, Misaka, the journey of 1,000 smiles. Yashasya 10 years ago. And to celebrate this milestone, MTN give you away exciting prizes in the MTN Momo at 10 promo. Yeah, you use Momo. No, you could win one of the 2019 Hyundai i10 cars. Yes, some of Samsung Smart TVs for baby. And they up to 3,000 cedis e-cash every month. And a grand prize, 2019 Hyundai Santa Fe in the MTN Momo at 10 promo. Into sign it on and then keep using your MTN Momo. Now when it big, if it's happening, I could see August only on Ghana's best network. Dial *120#. Now check your points. Terms and conditions apply. Just Momo it. We're there for you everywhere you go.
But the best, we stay above the rest. More quality, more affordability. Kingdom Books and Stationery. Everybody's going to the one and only shop where customer satisfaction is a guarantee. Kingdom Books and Stationery.
Oh yes, with our 30 days credit facility with no interest charge, free delivery services, and our free consultation on setting up your office, Kingdom Books and Stationery is unmatched in our delivery of quality and affordable office essentials, equipment, and furniture.
Experience world-class customer service in all our branches in Accra, Tema, Kumasi, Cape Coast, and Takoradi.
Call us on 0302-764-101
or visit our website at www.kingdomgh.com.
Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one-stop shop for all office essentials and stationery. Terms and conditions apply.
Honey, I need to get some.
But I don't have cash on me. Let me get some fuel quickly and let's go.
And how are you going to get the fuel? I thought you said you didn't have cash on you. What is this one?
My Puma card.
All it takes is a card. The Puma card allows you to buy fuel cash-free from all Puma energy filling stations. You can use your Puma card with any Visa points of sale and ATM across the country. The Puma card also works on mobile money. You get amazing discounts when you fill up with your Puma card. So register for free and get your Puma card instantly at any Puma filling station.
And you only got one for yourself, eh?
Yeah, would I have had that piece of mind?
Oh, thank you, honey.
And where are you going?
I'm getting something from the shop real quick. I need to test the card.
Puma card. Cash-free convenience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans Manson. I listen to you every day, and I encourage you and thank you for all the educative programs you mount.
This is Ghana Connect, and welcome to Joy 99.7 FM. Well, this week, together with a coalition of civil society groups, we joined a global campaign launched in London 2 weeks ago to defend media freedom.
The nation has experienced some of the worst atrocities against media men in the history of the Fourth Republic. A journalist, Ahmed Swale, has been killed. He was shot at close range.
It's something very shocking, and what people were even intending to do, we have big malams and imams who come to talk to us not to take the law into our hands, because yet we don't know who is responsible.
A journalist, Latif Idris, has been beaten and left with a fractured skull, wounded for life by police officers.
And they joined and beat me up with sticks, with their legs, with the back of the guns hitting my... Yesterday I asked him to take a shot of that. They hit me with the back of the gun about 3 times at the back of my head here.
Many others still bear the wounds from the brutal assault on them. At least 31 attacks in the last year and 41 since the assumption of office of President Akufo-Addo.
We hadn't recorded any incident of, a murder, but this year we've had that. We hadn't had a case where a journalist in Ghana has had to be compelled by circumstances to, at least relocate for a while. This year we've had that.
These and many more attacks on the media set the tone for the Global Forum on Media Freedoms in London early July.
With many governments also insulting and threatening journalists and seeking to throttle media organizations through strict controls on ownership, licensing and online activity.
The multimedia group joined the campaign with the launch of the hashtag Defend Media Freedom. For a lot of the experts, the nation is going through a period of gradual attempt to crack down on media freedoms. The limiting of the reach of FM stations. This is expected to affect various radio stations in Ghana, Joy FM, Peace FM, and many more.
There are laws that sometimes government may decide to apply it in a very whimsical and discriminatory way, such as what the NCA recently did in terms of shutting down certain particular media organizations in the name of applying a court ruling. And one wonders why others who were also affected by the same court ruling didn't suffer the same penalty.
To be fair, though, I think that generally for all of us, it is time that we all had a reawakening, because there are times when these things are happening, even, media houses that are professional themselves, it's as if we really do not care too much about what it is that happens to us.
Former VRA boss Dr. Charles Rekubrobe established the first private radio station in Ghana, Radio I. He described the current media dispensation as the worst in the history of the Fourth Republic.
It reminds me of a Dubois and his culture of silence. The government of the party that believed in the rule of law and the freedom of speech and expression and Kabir Maminkabi and everything is inadvertently, because I have no evidence to suggest that it has taken specific divisions, but it's inadvertently recreating a culture of silence in Ghana.
Freedom is something that we have to be fighting for every day, every hour, all the time.
For a man who fought for media freedom in Ghana, editor-in-chief of the Insight newspaper, Kwesi Pratt Jr., believes a return to a period of intolerance by the state for the media will be dangerous for its democracy. Those pushing for censorship of the media often cite infractions by pressmen as grounds for their posture. But Mr. Pratt says people who feel offended by the media must resort to the law.
That if the media is not responsible, then the freedoms will be taken away. And this is an utterly irresponsible statement, especially coming from media practitioners. You understand? I mean, nothing justifies the limiting of the space for free expression. Nothing in the world can justify that.
My name is Daniel Dazi.
Right, Nana Amfo. As the fourth estate of the realm, the media is only there to ultimately work in the interest of the public. That means any attempt to break its clause will be an attempt to stifle free speech. Is the reason media people will advocate a defense of press or media freedoms.
Press freedom.
Hashtag Defend Media Freedom. Fifi Kumsin, Joy News.
So when the hashtag Defend Media Freedom started trending on Monday, there were many who argued that the media cannot be demanding freedom when they are not responsible. Some even argue that the assault on some journalists, the perceived rollback of media freedoms are justified because of the perception of media irresponsibility. Here's veteran journalist Kwesi Pratt Jr.'s take on the issue.
Sometimes I'm utterly shocked by some statements that are made by media practitioners. I mean, I've been reading in the newspapers statements made by media practitioners to the effect that if the media is not responsible, then the freedoms will be taken away. And this is an utterly irresponsible statement. I mean, nothing justifies the limiting of the space for free expression. Nothing in the world can justify that.
Well, that has to be juggled somewhat, and so media responsibility, media freedom. Which of these comes first? Does one justify the other? It's a conversation that we need to have, and there's a wide range of individuals who, I guess, are beginning to talk about this. Elsewhere in the world, blogging can be a death sentence. People have run away from countries just because they were blogging on the internet somewhere. No matter how anonymous you are, the states in other countries have become very adept at locating them, and that is why in the studio with me today is Efo Dela, is the president of Blogging Ghana. Efo, thank you for connecting with us.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've heard the stories I'm talking about. In countries you cannot blog.
Yes,
you know.
I think it's in Uganda where Dr. Stella, I've forgotten how to mention her last name, got arrested for writing a poem about the president. Then she's been in jail for quite a while. So yes, in certain countries, blogging can get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? Just writing on social media can get you in trouble.
We'll try and find out how some of these may be manifesting in Ghana in different forms, really. And Nana Kofi Akwa, international photojournalist and pastor, has been doing this work in countries across the continent, in the darkest places when it comes to press freedom. And he joins us with some perspective. Always fascinating to hear from him. Sami Bartels is lawyer and journalist. I'm curious to hear his view on this. Martin is a resident, is just a citizen, leader of the Residents Association in Teshi. They've been advocating for fixing the Lekma Road, and he has some thoughts on this as well. George Sapon is a citizen. Jojo will join me because he spent years in Uganda and has some interesting perspective as well. You can connect later. We'll connect later with the executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. You can join us on this conversation. I've seen your comments on social media when this campaign started. This is a time to have your voices heard. We'll see what you make of this conversation. Wherever you are, this is how you can join us.
Join us now on Twitter, #Ghana Connect Live, Facebook, Joy 99.7 FM, or send us a WhatsApp on 0244 340 437, and we will call you back. Join the nation's biggest conversation now and connect to authority.
So wherever you are, you can join us. The best way, I think, it's Twitter, #Ghana Connect Live. Also, WhatsApp is 0244 340 437. I want to start with you, Sami, because you are mainstream. You've been doing mainstream for a while before you became a lawyer, and you know. So what's your view on this? I'm not restricting you. Just take it where you want to take.
View on what?
On anything, press freedom and or defending media freedom, which is the hashtag. It started 2 weeks ago in London, where there was a global forum on the back of, Jamal Khashoggi. There was also the sighting of Ahmed Swaleh. Locally, there have been instances of journalists being assaulted, across the country. And we've had one person killed, Ahmed Swaleh. So there's this conversation that we started this week about maybe it's time. We know generally we advocate for everybody's rights. So, TUC wants salaries. They'll write to the press. We'll invite them. We'll talk about the demanding. But when it comes to ourselves, we shy away from talking about it, and we thought maybe this is time to take it on. But what's your own view on all this conversation this week?
Thank you, Evans. Let me start with a story.
Tell me.
When you go to allafrica.com, there's a story that says journalists beaten by police for questioning their interference with press coverage of sporting event. And I read, Sami Bartels, sports reporter for City FM, an Accra-based independent radio station, was violently attacked by a group of police officers deployed at the Baba Yara Stadium in Kumasi, Ghana's second largest city. A photojournalist who took pictures of the attack was also beaten by the same police officers. The incident occurred after a World Cup qualifying game between the Ghanaian national team and their Libyan counterparts.
Oh, so you've been a victim?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I was a victim in 2005. I remember that very well. I was beaten with horsewhip.
And I remember eventually getting more concerned about the camera guy because he was doing his job. He saw what was happening. They took the camera, they smashed the camera, and they beat him to pulp at the Kumasi Sports Stadium. And what was the reason? We had passes that allowed us to access certain areas that the police refused to allow us to access. And in trying to insist that the pass actually says you can do your job, the response from the police at the time was to attack me, perhaps because I was the one trying to insist that everybody else had the right to access that aspect. And they attacked us. And so it's normal, actually. And if you talk to most journalists, they may share experiences. And it's not just physical, but verbal attacks on people and abuses of various forms. People may have, at one point or the other, experienced this. And I noticed that in the build-up to this throughout the week, but I think the emphasis has been too much on the physical attacks.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to freedom and the ability to do your work, there are many constraints. And they don't just come in the form of what I just explained, which was the story from back then. I think we have to tie the freedom of the media and that freedom of expression with access to be able to do your job. Because sometimes, and quite a number of occasions, it is in trying to get the access to do your job that people suffer the kind of intrusions to their ability to do their job. And let's be very clear that media freedoms are guaranteed by the Constitution.
True. There's a whole chapter on it.
That's the starting point. So it's not as if people are trying, because societies over time have realized that this is a key piece of the jigsaw puzzle when it comes to how society functions. So I think it's a critical issue. It's time to discuss it. But many people are playing the ostrich when it comes to this.
What do you mean by that?
I think people, the hypocrisy is too much. And what Kwesi Pratt said is quite instructive, that there are those who overemphasize responsibility. I think the starting point is really the freedom to do what you have to do.
So that's where you think it should start.
And I think when you broaden it beyond physical attacks on people, and I'll just touch briefly on this, and maybe you give me the opportunity to explain subsequently when I have to talk. But I think there are many ways in which, in doing our jobs, we are constrained. One of them is in the fact that plurality is very key. When different opinions and different voices are tolerated in society, it allows people to do what they have to do. But in Ghana, we claim there's a lot of plurality. And this year we've been toppled by Namibia, haven't we, in the press freedom index.
We've dropped, yes.
But what we have is diversity, not plurality. And so the fact that we have a multiplicity of media platforms and people online now, citizen journalists and other people have an opportunity, does not mean that politicians and other people within this country tolerate plurality and dissent in terms of the opinions that are expressed.
Okay.
People try to whip us all into an either-or situation.
You mean politically?
Yeah, it's one of them.
You're
and
either
when you
NDC or NPP.
When you stray in your bid to be objective, to say things as they are, then you are victimized. Which brings me to the second point, dehumanization of journalists. If you check through, and I'm not saying that there's a genocide against journalists, but you check through all instances of genocides, attacks against groups, it starts with dehumanization. And what is dehumanization? Effectively, when you begin to cast somebody in a lesser light, see them as troublesome, as nosy, as disruptive. And that's how sometimes between public officials, politicians, owners of resources in this country, that's the light in which they cast journalists.
In fact, I must say, journalism is the most demeaning profession.
Demeaning.
In fact, I sit here. I remember when I started journalism. I told myself, if my son ever comes to me and says, "Daddy, I want to be a journalist," I'll probably slap it out of him. Because you are disrespected all the time. And I've heard senior journalists say the same thing about if their children had come to them. Akable should join us and tell us a story about how, his great uncle,
people will share experiences, how often they are vilified, demeaned. And when people make statements that have the effect of demeaning people, vilifying a certain group of people, generally the very people you represent, which is the people of this country, will tend to also see you in a negative light. And that is what will give somebody the opportunity when a journalist goes to a party head office to slap the journalist and kick the journalist out. Because people have made statements somewhere that presented that journalist as a pest, a biased person who doesn't support the agenda. And so that other person feels empowered to act as he should against the journalist without any fear or remorse, because that journalist has been dehumanized in the person's eyes. And for me, that's the second step.
Okay.
The other, and I'll come to the others if you give me the
yes.
time.
Hold on. I'll
But
come
it's
to
just
that. I'll
lay the
come to that.
foundation.
No, you people forget that you were a very frontline mainstream guy. In fact, you still are.
Yes, I am. And so let's talk about, because I'm a photographer. Normally,
Yes.
I will talk about World Press Freedom.
Yeah.
So I was in Indonesia for World Press Freedom Day. And then the following year, we had it in Ghana, and I was there. And shortly after, our president came and spoke plenty English. Shortly after, a journalist was assassinated.
Oh, that's a Swale event.
Yeah.
Just shortly after that.
It's pretty much, yeah. It wasn't that far.
Interesting.
That far off. And this year, I was on the jury for the World Press Photo competition.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm saying this so people know that I am. And I'm a member of the GJ. I'm a journalist, also a blogger.
Yeah.
But and if I speak to this, so one time I was doing a story at the castle when the presidency used to be at the castle.
Yeah.
And the journalist, I don't remember which station he was from, basically couldn't afford a stand for his microphone, so he had to lie on the floor whilst the late President Atta Mills was speaking. So you can imagine, when you talk about dehumanizing journalists, you can imagine this journalist lying on the floor, holding up a microphone, and the president speaking into his microphone.
Kidding me?
Yeah. And I was standing there, and I'm like, at what point will you ever get any respect in this country if you
As a
work
journalist?
As a journalist, So I'll shoot for the New York Times, shoot for Bloomberg, shoot for, name them, all of them. And I don't think a photo of mine has ever been in the Ghanaian press, And it is because of the dehumanization Sambatel talks about. It is hard for me to photograph some minister who has no respect for me. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my skill. It's not worth it. They can find some other journalist who is on their payroll. And it's also part of the problem that the media in Ghana is deliberately starved. So our situation may not be as bad as Tanzania. And these are all places I've worked at.
Yeah.
I've worked at. So Tanzania, Ethiopia, Uganda, I can name places where the hostility is very, very much obvious. But there is a other type where the media is starved so that you have to depend on the power to survive. So if you take a very typical Ghanaian media house, you may discover that the number of people who are comfortably paid are the editors and a few others.
Maybe the morning show host.
Yes. The rest, basically, they need solely and handouts to survive.
That's true.
So when you are surviving at other people's mercy, at what point do you become human enough to be assertive when there's a story?
That's a big challenge.
It's a huge challenge. And you can come up with a greater story and your editor can kill it, depending on who is paying them. In fact, sometimes they use it, they would make a call, like, hey, this and kill it.
What you're saying is reality, though.
It is the reality.
Yeah.
So, I haven't even gotten to the responsibility bit, because responsibility assumes that.
So have we brought this on ourselves, though?
No, I wouldn't say we've brought it on ourselves, because it's political orchestration, and maybe what we haven't done is, and for example, if you go to the GJ office, there was a time when I needed, because I am freelance, it helps. Now I don't work for any particular, so it helps to sometimes have the GJ ID card. It took them about a year. You go
to get your ID card?
Yeah, it's broken. This, that, and then finally, when I got it, the start date had rather become the expiry date, so they had to do another one. So, forgive me, but the GJ, from my experience, looks like a very clumsily run organization. So, to get to the point where the media, and listen, people have laid good foundations for us. So, if you look at Africa, Ghana's media is highly respected. However, considering the foundations that were laid for us, this isn't where we should be. And I can speak to this as a photojournalist. If I take a typical Ghanaian newspaper, nobody buys a Ghanaian newspaper because they want to see the photos. Have you ever thought about that?
No. I probably will buy, maybe it's a story I'm interested in, but the photo, no.
No, never.
No.
Nobody ever buys a Ghanaian newspaper.
So in
for
Ghana,
the
the people who are most disrespected are the photographers and the cameraman.
Yes.
In fact, one day they'll beat the journalist, but they'll beat the photographer far more.
Yes, because this is what happens when there's a story on Galamsey. the press house is just happy to post a photo of the Minister for Mines or whatever.
That's true.
If there's a story on water, they'll post the photo of a minister. But that is not the story. The minister isn't the story. So this, all you need to run a media house a press house in Ghana seems to be a collection of photos, an album of photos of ministers and
on file. Every now and then, just
and so you don't
them.
need. So we don't have strong visual storytelling in our culture. I mean, that never took off. That never took off. So yes, we've compared to others, we've come far, but we really have a very, very long way to go.
Okay, so I'll come to the you touched on the thing. I'll come to the and you say the freedom must start with it because the Constitution guarantees it. But others may argue the press itself, and you mentioned an aspect of it, Nana, which is the fact that the press itself hasn't been. We don't respect ourselves. As in, we allow politicians to play us. Our work isn't to standard, as you pointed out with the photography, etc. And I've seen this week when we started the campaign. People come on social media on the hashtag and say, "You guys, what are you talking about? You don't deserve this freedom you're asking for. We need to see you being responsible, and then we can have that conversation." George, what's your take on that?
Okay, so let me come in and good evening to your lovely listeners across the length and breadth of our country. Maybe you may not know, but I also do some bits and pieces of journalism. A lot of my articles have been published on my
so you write?
online. Yeah, I do write.
Good.
Daily Graphic, Modern Ghana, a few other places, and I run a blog myself. So, but to start with, I think that it will be unfortunate for anybody to think that media does not deserve freedom to practice and churn out relevant information like we need to have. It is not for any reason that our constitution regards the media as the fourth estate of our realm, which lets it seemingly puts it out there, or let me say actually puts it out there, that there is a lot that the media needs to do in our democracy. So for example, for everything happening in and around, let's say, the government or every other thing, but for the media, nobody would hear it. So it tells you that the media, it's very essential to the development of our country. But then when you're looking at the media, I think that you would have to look at the various aspects of the things that happen when it comes to the operation of the media. So for example, in Ghana here, the restrictions that exist in countries like Ethiopia, like he mentioned earlier when we're off air, do not exist here. There would not be a time where somebody is prevented from actually doing media for, let's say, speaking against the president or doing something.
Have you heard about Modern Ghana?
Yes, I have.
Yes. I mean,
yes, I have.
They'll argue that they wrote a story about a minister. They were first called to take the story offline. They did. The next thing they realized, officers of the national security stormed their offices, seized the equipment, thrown them behind bars, and allegation is, what's the word? Tortured them, which is the subject of an inquiry currently.
Yeah.
So they'll point out to you that this has happened.
So it even brings up one of the issues that we need to critically look at. So for example, in the case of the Modern Ghana, like you rightly cited, Modern Ghana journalist says that he was picked up because he did a story about somebody in government. Now, national security also comes back to say that they picked the journalist up for issues of cybersecurity and fraud.
Yeah.
And the matter is they actually proceeded to court and all of that. So it brings the issue of is it just your word against mine or my word against yours, or there's some finality that can be put to issues in circumstances like that. And I think that's one of the points we also need to reach as far as our country is concerned. So if something comes up and let's say there's a story against government says that, okay, I have not done so and so, but then the media person insists that this is what has happened, then who actually gets us to the finality? Because we've had a situation in this country where a journalist said he had been attacked. He was made to go through a clinical test, and it was realized that it was not human blood on his body, but actually the blood of a fowl. And this is something that was very unfortunate, and it took us back. When you look at some of the gains that you have made, personally, I think that we really need the media and our progress and our development as a country. But then also, when people try to make the argument of responsibility, I think that is something that we cannot necessarily sweep under the carpet. But it is not enough, or it will be unfortunate to say that, okay, until the media is responsible, beat them, do this to them. No, I think that would be a wrong way to go. We need the media to be responsible, but all other freedoms that must be accorded the media need to be accorded them. So, for example, when the passage of the RTI was done, personally, one of the things I was hoping I could see in there was witness protection. You know, if you take a look at the United States of America, if somebody has to do work that naturally puts their life in harm's way, which is likely to happen with the passage of the RTI, you might go follow some big case that involves people in high places. You might do something that somebody somewhere might not be happy. So, for example, you do a story about the leakages in the petroleum sector, and you probably are attacking the petroleum cabal, the invincible petroleum cabal, and it puts your life in harm's way. What is the policy to necessarily protect you? So in other jurisdictions, when you are doing or following a story like that,
it's just, with all due respect, I think the current framework of the law as we have here should be adequate for such protections. It is the enforcement of it. And this is where I talk about people behaving like an ostrich, because it is very clear. I mean, this is perhaps overflocked when you say freedom and independence. Remember, it's freedom and independence. So not only must the person have the freedom to do their work, they must be independent, and that comes with editorial independence, not trying to constrain the person to toe a particular line, for instance. But people talk about responsibility, and when you go further to the Article 164, it says the provisions of Article 162 and 163 of the Constitution are subject to the laws that are reasonably required in the interest of national security, public order, public morality, for the purpose of protecting the reputations, rights, and freedoms of other persons. So remember, on the one hand, you're a media person doing your work, you're entitled to publish what you can publish. But there are other things that counterbalance what you do. So, for instance, although RTI means, you can go for that information, you balance it against the privacy rights of other people, you balance it against the reputational rights of other people, because in publishing something, remember, somebody can bring an action against you, right, for defamation, if what you are publishing has that quality of being defamatory. And then there's always those other issues I mentioned, such as public interest, national security. But the key thing there is proportionality. You should not kill a fly with a sledgehammer. And so on this modern Ghana issue, whether government is right or not, for me, it's not the issue, it's the how. So you say that they had done something which amounts to a threat to our cybersecurity. What is it, and how were they handled? And they lay down procedures for when people are suspected of having committed a crime. And are these guys not entitled to the freedoms every other citizen is entitled to under the Constitution? And I think that's where the issue comes in, because we've come from a history where these rights were abused.
Yeah.
And we are no longer there. It is for that reason that this Constitution is in place. It is not up to people in power to decide as and when to apply the rules when it comes to journalists.
Let me bring in you are the head of the president of Blogging Ghana. How is this conversation playing out among bloggers? Is this something that you guys been
so
confront?
In the last few years, the freedom of expression has been tested in a lot of countries. A few episodes ago, I was here. We discussed one blogger who had been sued and things like that. So we have had situations where the freedom has been tested, but on the blogging side and social media side, we've not really had any problems like we've had in other countries. However, when we come to the traditional media, that is where in the last few years I have felt like the freedom that we enjoyed maybe in the last 10 years seems to have declined a bit.
Explain.
I think that the death of the journalist has put a lot of fear in a lot of people who would probably be careful about how and a lot of people expected more from this government, because when they were in opposition, they seemed to be very championing the press freedom. And one of the things that I've realized, especially when it comes to people talking about responsibility, they talk about responsibility when they are the target of the stories.
Yeah.
Once they are not the target of the story, they think that everybody should have a lot of freedom, which presupposes that freedom is more important, in my opinion, than their responsibility. Because
so in Ghana, it's a very interesting point. The people affected by the story say that is irresponsible journalism.
Yes.
Those who are beneficiary of the story will say to you that is fantastic journalism.
Yes, you can take it like there have been lots of radio stations, City FM, Joy FM, that have been tagged as one supporting one party when that party was in power. And the moment they went into opposition and the other party came into power, they've been accused of supporting the other party, which presupposes that if you left the skill to the politicians and people in power, then the response that if you left the skill to them to decide what is responsible journalism or what is press freedom, then nobody is going to get press freedom, because once the people in power are the targets of the stories, they would cry foul. So you can see it even in the most in the country that is supposed to be considered the country leading in
US.
You see the president constantly criticized.
In fact, he banned the CNN journalist from coming to the White House. They sued him,
you
and they won.
That. So we are in a certain era where politicians and people in authority seem to have grown bolder in vilifying the media and in vilifying press freedom and tagging their vilification of the media as asking them to be responsible in their reportage, which I think is
There's an interesting point I want to bring Martin in here. And Martin is, as I said, he's a resident, leader of the Residents Association in Teshi. They've been advocating for the Lekma Road to be fixed. Something very interesting happened when the minister, after the Joy FM Wager campaign, to get the road fixed, the minister went there finally, and he was upset that, he didn't mention a particular media house's name, but it was in fact that a media house had come there and they were making noise. They should come to his office and we take them around the country to go and host their shows on all the roads in the country that are bad. And he was upset that that sort of pressure had been brought to bear in a way that he felt was inappropriate, because he said the other media houses come to him.
Irresponsible.
Exactly. Other media houses come to him and they work together. But we decided to go there and directly do our thing. And so you heard. I don't know if you heard the minister when he spoke that day.
Okay, yeah.
You did. Well, what's your reaction to that? Because I haven't heard a resident reaction to that. Because that was a very powerful sound. I'm going to try and look for it and play. What's your reaction to that?
Anyway, my very good evening to my listeners who are listening to us at this very time. I must say that Teshi is an interesting place to live.
It is.
Yeah, I must admit. In fact, we all know that press freedom is a basic thing we all need in Ghana. Over the years, we have enjoyed that, and people would love to go into journalism in one way or the other. But what do we see of late? People are pursued for doing their job, and in fact, this has brought fear into Ghanaians, the young ones who are now coming up. In fact, I was called on one of the program at Adwa TV to come and speak to some issue. In fact, going there has become something which I have to find difficult to go on the program because of the recent kidnapping.
Oh, you are afraid that because of what you say, somebody will take you on for what you say?
I think some few years ago we never experienced such. I think the people of Teshi have enjoyed the some kind of benefit out of the press. And I must
what
say,
benefit is this?
The Teshi Link Road, Teshi Agleza Manet Road,
the famous Lekma Road.
Good. That leads to the hospital has been deplorable for some time now, and in fact, it has become a headache. No business goes on there when people go to hospital. In fact, some will have to even give birth on the way. Mm-hmm. In fact, miscarriages here and there. It is very pathetic, my brother. And so along the way, we get connected to. I think at the time you mantle up on our platforms. You were there. You speak to the issue, and it has brought a result.
What result is that?
In fact, as I speak with you, there are contractors who are currently on the road. As I speak with you now, there are forced some gravel, some quarrels along certain point of the road.
So there's work happening.
Yeah.
As a resident, are you saying that you wouldn't have had this if the media had not thrown a focus and done the work?
Oh,
is
yes.
That what you're saying?
Yes. Because
I mean, how do you come to that conclusion?
We have written to the MCE, we have written to the Honorable Okoboy, on that, the effect of the road that is having on us, and all sort of things. But there hasn't been any response. When the only response we hear is that government needs to act. Government needs to get a response from the government. Meanwhile, he is the leader over there. He must facilitate. And now we never hear anything. But when the media came in, I remember you were there, and you advocated that the road needs to be fixed. And so with your intervention and stuff, the road, as I'm speaking with you, like I said, there is some improvement, and we hope that as you have become the mouthpiece and the heart for the society, it is yielding a very good result.
I mean,
so
it's a very interesting point you make, and Nana, I know you deployed the tool of the media. In fact, one of the most striking images I've ever seen is that I saw on your blog. This guy who was in a gutter had been lynched, right?
Mob justice,
and mob justice. Yeah, that's the time that I had a whole show on this because the picture was so compelling, and this was before the soldier was lynched. And I had a whole, and I thought. Sometimes you hear the story, but you don't see the way you captured it. I think you're picking your children to school. It's a power that the media wields. Isn't that why I guess there is, and I'm talking about now the governmental side of things. They acknowledge that power. He just testified to it. He believes that the media was there, and so they acknowledge that power. And so it's in their interest to do everything they can, either directly or indirectly, to try and either control the narrative or control the media.
So so for me it's two things. One, the media doesn't know its true power, you see, because unfortunately we have a system where the way to becoming a journalist is not the most tedious, is not most, I'll give you an example. So a university in Ghana employed me to teach photojournalism as a course, a level 300 course. I sent the course rep to go to the university library to get certain books. These are textbooks. The guy calls me and says, "Sir, not only can I not find any of the books you've listed in the library, there is no book on photojournalism in the university library." One, this is a private university. It charges students to teach them journalism, to teach them photojournalism. And the school hadn't bothered to invest in a single book. Buy the books and you make it reference only, not a single book, you see. So sometimes the quality of, because once a journalist really knows what they are doing, it's a lot of power. I like to compare journalists to the prophets of old. Basically you see them being lynched, being killed, because they are the conscience of the nation. They speak truth to power. They speak the future. Journalism is powerful. And so I feel that African governments generally, so this is not particularly Ghana, but generally, is consistently looking at how to weaken the media.
Okay.
If you can't terrorize them, stuff their mouth with good food, the leadership. Let them be on your side. So when the stories come out, it's always polarized. It's almost as if there is no truth anymore, depending on which party. You can basically tell how sometimes you're listening to radio and you're listening to a journalist and like, this guy is in this pocket. and then when and the government changes and all of a sudden they are critical and very analytical and like, isn't it the same guy who was all so and it's because the media is deliberately starved. They're not paid enough, they're not empowered enough, So I think that forget about those asking that the media should be responsible. They don't know what they are talking about. You first get your driver's license. So we first empower you and then we demand that you are responsible.
Okay.
On the road. This is how it works everywhere. First you get your marriage certificate and then we demand that, go be a good spouse. So you can't place the responsibility before the empowerment.
This is where the plurality comes in. I say that you hardly hear the politician complaining when the stories are praise-singing stories.
Yeah.
And so you have a situation where
when the story is criticizing their opponent.
Yeah, you have a situation where there's a deliberate attempt to divide journalists along those who are in favor of power and those who are against power. What's the point?
But don't you allow ourselves for that to happen?
Well, we do, don't we? Because man must eat, right?
True.
And so at the end of the day, he spoke about the conditions. Thomas Jefferson once said the only security all of us have is a free press. It's because everybody has the freedom of expression.
Is that true in Ghana, though? Or does the ordinary citizen acknowledge that quote, the quote you just made?
The fact that the only security of all is in a free...
Yeah, does the ordinary citizen acknowledge that?
You see...
I asked that because, what's the name of the association, of the CDD?
Yeah.
Last year, Afrobarometer did a survey, fascinating results on media freedom, and they found the majority of Ghanaians who they surveyed wanted more governmental control of the media.
This is where the demonization comes in. Over time, and you have to understand that in this country, 45% here, 45% on the other side, see everything that happens through the lenses of the political party they support.
Yeah.
And that will influence their thought process about the media and what they report, whether it's favorable to their party or it hurts their party or others. I just received a message from a good friend of mine who says, what is freedom without responsibility? Why aren't you talking about responsibility? And I say, responsibility is inbuilt into every freedom.
Of course.
Responsibility is when you're a minister and you are given money to go and spend in Egypt, in the Nations Cup campaign, and although you've been given so much, you exercise good governance to say this is not necessary, that is not necessary, and you don't justify on the basis that it was slightly above what you were given. The fact that you've been given money does not mean responsibility is when you are elected to become a member of parliament and the people expect that you will represent them adequately. Responsibility is when you are given a political office. That even when you are not elected and you are merely an aide or whatsoever in government, you know that it is the people who have put you there. Responsibility cuts across. And so let's not use that as the cane to lash journalists. Of course, we do know that there are excesses. But I think people take the few excesses and then they try to generalize. Because they are brilliant journalists doing very great jobs. You are here. And I always ask, you see, when I say, for instance, and the Greeks have something they call doxa, which is opinion, which is critical and fundamental to our democracy. If you are giving me not just the freedom, but independence, and giving me access to information, it means that when I do the story, I would have had access to you to have your part of the story.
Yeah, it will be more balanced.
But when it becomes smokes and mirrors, what I have available to me
is what
I present, because the journalist tries to tell the story. How many times haven't you seen politicians run into the studio the next morning to come and have a rejoinder?
Yeah.
When the previous day producers tried
to
reach them on the line and they didn't give them the opportunity. The media is what you make them, and they are a reflection of the society we find ourselves in. A divided society, a politically partisan society.
I want to start with you, Delo, and I'll come to you, and I'll end with you.
We should never underestimate the power that the media has to effect change. Like the struggle for independence in Ghana would not have happened without the
press. In fact, Kwame Nkrumah came back, and his first thing he did was to take the pen up and do a newspaper and start.
So
Boris Johnson, who just became the prime minister, is a journalist.
Yeah,
I mean,
so if you look at the roads that are being improved because journalists criticize somebody for not working on it. Recently, Jon Stewart in the US, who is like a citizen journalist in a way, has forced the senators to pass a law protecting the first responders on 9/11.
Yes.
We see City FM has started this war against indiscipline. Like, it works. They know that it works, and because people are benefiting from the chaos, they want to, as he says, stuff people's mouth, to stifle them, to limit the information that the journalists have, to make those informed choices, to put that pressure on them. That is why we constantly hear responsibility. And as I said, they only talk about responsibility when you are criticizing them, not when you are criticizing their opponents. You wouldn't have heard responsible journalism from the NPP government when they were in opposition and these stations were criticizing Mahama's government. Now, we are not hearing Mahama's government talking about
responsibility of the media anymore.
You only hear it from...
In fact, the famous line is, standards are falling.
Yes.
Shifting of goalposts.
Exactly.
Standards are falling.
I wanted to say, when Battles was talking, so when the NDC was in power, there was a member of one of their MPs. We used to clash here on a number of programs.
Yes.
And he always thought I was NPP. I didn't know that until the NPP came, and then there was the plagiarism with the president's inauguration.
We did a show about it.
And he was here, and so I was just bashing the president's for being lousy and all that. And after the show, he walked up to say, "Hey, I always thought you were NPP.
Wow, look.
But why must you be here or there?
But he didn't end. And then he said, you are too idealistic or whatever. He used a certain word and he said, if you do that, you will starve. Well, in this country, if you do that, you will starve.
Wow.
Yes. So basically, you have a politician who doesn't believe that it is possible to be a journalist and be neutral. Why?
Or be objective.
And be objective. Why? Because if you do that, you will starve. Those were his words.
So what he's saying, that's a powerful point.
Yeah.
That if you do your job professionally,
you will starve. You will starve.
Oh, that's powerful.
So he's threatening your right to do your job.
But that's a threat. No, he was saying this at a time when he wasn't in power.
Yes,
he was speaking out of concern.
What he's telling you is that the ideal situation would be to have media people who do their bidding one way or the other.
Exactly.
And the truth is that you get rewarded for that.
Yeah.
But what that does is that.
So if you don't want to starve, then be unprofessional.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Then come with us.
Yes.
Precisely.
Sing our tune.
But the effect is that it has a chilling effect on people's ability to be objective and to do middle ground reporting. What happens is that over time, because of the bashing you will get, and it's happened to several good journalists, you self-censor.
Yeah.
But you don't come out as much. And that's why I think the best thing that could have happened is technology. Because what it does is that a lot of the constraints that come with traditional media are constraints that no longer exist for those who are on
and I guess that's what
I don't think that any journalist owes any politician the right to be fair, free and fair, or to be neutral. I think that journalists can be biased to certain topics, and I don't have a problem with it, so long as they don't allow those biases to cloud certain topics. For example, if we want to say that everybody should get if the MPP is doing something wrong, and we say that we want to be free and fair, so we are going to allow them to excuse themselves, because we are going to give the panel to excuse, I'm running out of
okay, no, hold on. I think the choice of words matter. If I get you right, and we are not saying that should not be the case. Not everybody can be in the middle. There are newspapers that have leanings everywhere. There are conservative newspapers, liberal newspapers. So when you buy The Guardian, you know they are liberal. When you buy the Daily Mail, you know it's a conservative newspaper. In the same way, when you go to the US, you know where the New York Times is, where the Washington Post is. You can have leanings and still be extremely professional about how you develop. So I wouldn't use bias. I'm saying people can have leanings, but they can be extremely professional and factual about how they go about their work.
Exactly.
But the thing I've noticed, and it comes back to what Nana said, and what the politician said is true. In Ghana, when you do the journalism that is professional, that is regardless of who oxes God, you become, I guess, the victim. You'll be victimized. And so whether the NDC is the party that is getting, is at the receiving end of your professionalism, they will attack you. And if it switches, the MPP will. So we've had a situation with multimedia where MPP's government have boycotted us recently, right? NDC did same when they were in government. And you think these two parties, one when each of them in government, have boycotted you? Is that suggest that you're doing something right, or
that
doing something
means
wrong?
you're doing good journalism? You see, and I talk about the starvation bit is very important to understand. You see, Ghana is a very expensive country to live in. It's a very, very expensive country to live in. Part of being in the media is also being in the limelight. So when you can't afford to live decently, even at the very basic level, the probability of you getting compromised at some point is very, very high. You see, let me give you an example. So when the New York Times sends a photographer on assignment and you do what we call a long day, it's $750 for the day. $750 for the day. If you do what we call a regular day, it's, I think, $400. How many journalists in Ghana get paid $400
a month?
A month.
Just a quick point. So what it's relegated the journalism job into, and I thank God for people like Evans who have been in this job for so long. I remember covering MV Benjamin many years ago when I was an Upstart. It's turned the media or the job into an audition job
Yeah.
Because elsewhere, you have
Stepping
people who are
stone.
lifelong journalists,
Yeah.
committed to a
Yeah.
cause, knowing their role in society, and able to sustainably do that for as long as they can until they retire.
People are 70 years, 80, and that's
Now, because poor conditions, the bait thrown to them by politicians, and this keenness by politicians to always have one journalist or the other firmly in their pocket. What it means is that people's jobs are essentially an audition for a better life, quote and unquote. And so with every change of government comes a mass migration out of this profession into personal aids,
that's a
persons
turn
for
off.
ministries, and all that, and they are never the same when they come back.
Of course, they
Yeah.
can. Let me give you a quote.
I need to bring it a citizen.
Sorry,
Sure. And
just
I
a
need
quick
to
quote.
yeah,
Just a
because
quick
somebody-
quote.
yes, right.
So a politician once said to me, "Walk with me, and I'll make you walk on diamonds."
Martin, Martin had you wanted to come in when I asked the question when he read the quote from whose quote was that?
Jefferson.
Samuel Jefferson.
Oh, yes.
That the media is security.
The only
of-
security, yes.
And I was asking whether citizens acknowledge that.
Oh, of course, yes. I must admit that the people of Teshe are so grateful to the media because this very road incident thing you have mentioned earlier. In fact, it was raised to the minister somewhere way back January and then June 24th. But nothing has been done. My brother, as I speak with you now, there is work ongoing, like I said earlier. And I must admit the press, the media, the multimedia for the good work done. The people of Techi are so grateful. And this tells us that the media is very persuasive when they are doing their job. They make sure they do, in fact, some do the work with due diligence. And as such, it brings results. These are one of the results, in fact. And so I must say that you shouldn't relent, persuade on the work done on the job. If not, along the way, they could stop and then it should be some way.
So you don't want us to stop, huh?
Yeah.
I'll come to it. But I want to hear what you are saying on social media. Then I'll come to you.
Evans, this one says demanding responsibility of the media before upholding the rights of the media is like asking that all rights of Ghanaians be taken away until citizens behave properly. Maybe we should bring back the days of the military regime and the rule of terror until Ghanaians appreciate what we have. We need the media. This one from Sam in the UK says, so long as journalists continue to eat from the palm of these greedy politicians, they will never respect you guys. But we listen, but we the listeners know all those bad and bribe-taking journalists by their deeds. We have a lot of information that we prefer to share directly with ourselves rather than the media because of these things. Most of us are very disappointed in the media, and just look at how some people have betrayed the profession which made them today. That's some from the UK. This one says, the trouble with the media freedom in Ghana is arrogance. Media men are increasingly becoming arrogant, all because they want to be popular. Another one from Pani says, I'm enjoying your panel today. Keep the good work. This one says, Mr. Mensa, my name is Prince Achu from Hohoi. I think the media should stand up and campaign freedom and justice and show, as shown on the coat of arms. That's that's Prince from Hohoi.
A very good journalist friend of mine says, I will never allow my children or advise anyone to go into this profession. Too much poverty.
Vincent from Tema says, I find it very disconcerting and unthinkable when the death of Ahmed Swale is listed as part of media oppression. Has any investigation proven that he was killed in the line of duty? The association of his death and the narrative is very disingenuous.
George.
Okay. Yeah, it's good to be back. I think my brother in glasses on the other side has had a field day today. So it's very good to be back. I think every part of the conversation today in some way somehow connects to me. So I'm also a resident of the famous Teshi Link Road.
Oh, wow, okay. I see.
Yes, so I really get where he's coming from.
Have you seen the work on the road yourself?
Yes, I have. And I think that when you mentioned the minister earlier, personally, I wasn't really impressed with the way he spoke. I think
you listened?
Yes, I listened.
Okay.
I think that if you're a public servant, irrespective of the issues at play, you may have to observe some calm demeanor even before you speak to people, especially when you have disagreements. Okay, but I think the whole issue that he had problems with the fact that the contract had actually been given to somebody on the 20th of June, which was even reported by, was it Adom? I think was it Omanhini or somebody like that. And then later the issues come up, and he wakes up the next morning and he has a feeling that something that he had signed off is going to happen just because the media made some good publicity about it. So for him, it is something that he has signed off that was bound to happen a week before even the campaign started. And then it looks like he has done nothing. So which is understandable for him to feel that way. But for me, I feel that the way he communicated that was not really good. But first and foremost, I think that it's important for us to keep this thing going where we conscientize our people. So for example, when the issue about the 200 million new parliamentary chamber came up, I love the way the citizens rose up and everybody spoke against it, and the fact that it was not a priority. We need our people to be up like that. So if you drift the conversation back to the whole point of media and the freedoms and the responsibilities and all, for me, I feel that sometimes to us media people, we need to help ourselves. So if you want to go back to, let's say, the issue of XYZ and the other radio station,
that shut down radio,
you understand? The law states that every 5 years you need to renew your license.
Your argument that we just simply do that.
You get it. So Joy renews their license, City does their license, Adom, everybody does their license, and for some good almost 19 years you refuse to renew your license.
Okay. So that's a bit about you. We are also responsible.
Yes, of course. I mean, that's the part, because for example, if let's say I'm a media person, I do blogging myself. I'm a columnist for People and all. I mean, for sites here and there. So if I want to do a story about my brother here, and I just want to do a story just because I just want to do it, or I put certain things that's out there that are factually inaccurate, and I'm aligning, and he takes me on, and I'm on the other side of the law. That would necessarily be an irresponsibility on my part.
On your part. We need to wrap up here. I don't want to take quick 30 seconds from everybody. I want to start with you, the Citizen Martin. Quick 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I might say hello to my brother.
I see. Yeah. Well, the media does that too. We give you opportunity to say hello. But let me quickly go to...
Admittedly, there are excesses which must be worked on. We need to self-regulate, not self-censor. We need to uphold high standards of this profession, train ourselves, and ensure that, like the politicians, we also are responsible, and the people uphold us to their responsibility. But let me just say that accountability is not limited to the ballot box. It's a daily occurrence, and the media are the agents for ensuring that this daily occurrence of accountability actually takes place.
Ghana has come a very long way, and we have a longer way to go. And I hope that politicians do not sit on their high horses and vilify the people that got them there, the people who carry their messages to other people. We will put ourselves in a very dangerous position if we do that. You see, it's another.
Nana bless us.
Yes, I would say that journalism is a very, very sacred calling. People. So sometimes I talk about the sacred and the secular, and I think it's a sacred calling. And people who feel called to this must know that sometimes it may cost us our lives, but it is worth it.
Push on. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. Run out of time. Thank you for connecting.